Hi everyone, Ernie Tech here. What I'm going to do today in part 5 is we're going to move into a proper terminal emulation environment. And the reason why I'm doing that is because although what's built into Sim 390 is perfectly fine, you're going to run into some problems later in our explorations, especially if you're on a laptop, because it's going to ask you at some point in time for a program function key entry. And I ran into a menu where it was asking for program function keys, PF keys, instead of the regular F keys, and I was using my laptop while watching a football game or something like that, true multitasking, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to give it the answer that it wanted, and so I had to kill that session, which is not the way to do things. And I thought, all right, time to move into a proper terminal environment, an emulator environment, and I throw this graphic here up on the screen, and very quickly, let's go through this. So this is this is the way we are connecting to our simulation. Were it another day in time or even more commercial environment, you would be looking at other types of protocols, SNA and so on, dial-up processes. You would be having controllers at the front end of the computer, have controllers at the location where the terminals are, and so forth. This is not what we're doing. This is not the way things are done with Hercules or with Sim 390. We use good old TCP/IP. So what you have here is you have essentially a couple of different environments, all in the colored blocks there. In the orange, you have the data center environment where you have an emulator in the PC that's there, although it's probably just the console to the mainframe. A printer, routers in and out, whatever the case may be. You might not have a router, or you might have going into the terminal. Between the mainframe and the terminal, you might have a controller. The router is going to come in off of the internet. Over there in the blue, maybe you're at McGill University, you're in the dorm, you got your PC, and that's how you're coming in to do your homework. If you're in the college library, remember back in the day you would go to the library. Do they still do that? I think they do. And if you're in the admin offices, maybe you have some other kind of server. I doubt Windows NT. That's kind of passe, I think, isn't it? Anyhow, IBM did have an emulator available, Microsoft Windows NT server called SNA, which was their proprietary system network architecture, but I don't think that's really the case in a pure TCP/IP environment like we have here. Also notice at the bottom of each of those terminals you can see IO device, remote, local, and so on, and they refer to the entry in the configuration file for Sim 390. So the first device that's going to come in locally would get assigned 0F0 and perhaps a task control block of 10 that would be assigned by the system. In the college library, each person that logs in is going to get an additional available IO device ID, but it's going to be for a remote 3270, different control blocks. So what happens is the system keeps track of who's online and what tasks it's working on for them through the use of the IDs, the hex IDs right there, in this case like 0F0 or 0F4, and then it assigns task control blocks to keep track of who gets what service, who is working on what task. In the orange area, you're going to see there's this IO device printer 00E printout.txt, and that is essentially the logical address for the printer. And then up in the upper left-hand corner, little circly things look like pies on top of each other. IO device disk 512201 musicgex.3370. That's the emulation of the 3370 DASD, and its device ID is 201. And that's the actual device that the whole thing boots from, or IPLs, as it were. Okay, and you know how much I love coffee, so let me grab a quick swig here. In my ever-present Buc-ee's mug, which you have to buy online through a third party. I didn't realize Buc-ee's didn't have its own dedicated mail order operation. Oh, that's just not right. We have to change that. All right, so that's that. All right, back over here. Now you're looking at a web page. It's x3270.bgp.new. And I'll put a link down below. That's where you're going to find the terminal emulator that we're going to use. There are other kinds. There are other brands, models, makes, and so on. There's one by a guy named Tom Brennan, I think his name is, called Vista 3270. And it's the top of the liner. It's the one that everybody likes to use, but it costs you a couple dollars. $30. And it hasn't been upgraded in a long time as far as I know, but it's very powerful. It gives you lots of bells and whistles. And we're not going to use bells and whistles. We're going to use more like kazoos and triangles, at least for our musings. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to go there, and over in the left-hand corner, you're going to see where it says downloads. Let me get my mouse to function mouse. Before we do that, let me just show you a couple things right in the center. They offer a whole bunch of different versions of this 3270 emulator for your PC, and you have two real choices. You have the WX3270 and the WC3270. So that's this one here and the fourth one down. We're going to go with the WC, and the reason why is because I like to keep it old school, and that is much more text-oriented, where the WX has a graphical interface. You still have a text screen, but you have more icons and cute little things to press, but I don't like that. Old school. Go to download. Takes you over to where it keeps it. Windows setup files. Here's the two versions, the C and the X. Go with the C. Go with the stable. Go over and grab it from bgp.nu. You can get it from SourceForge, but it's an extra step or two. Who needs that? So I'm not going to go through the process of installing this and showing you all that little nuance, because you know how to do it. You know how to download a file and get it to run. Download it. It sends it to, I don't know, download, something like that. Double-click it. It's a usual install thing, and it'll install it somewhere. And on your desktop, it's going to give you an icon. So go ahead, download this. You can see in the lower left-hand corner the whole path to the setup file. Set it up. It'll let it do its thing, and then it's going to create a little icon. Here it is. Right over here is the icon. See the mouse here? I've done this before, so you can already see I have some things here. I'm going to toss that one away so we can get from scratch. Come on, get in there. Refresh. Yep, okay. All right, so it's going to create this little icon that says WC3270 Wiz, and all that is a function, a way to set up an instance of this emulator for your SIM390 installation. You see I have one here that says MTS. I've already set up one in the past for my Michigan terminal system, and so we're going to try this one, and we're going to do this locally. This one is actually on my Nanode. And it's a funny thing, this morning I got an email at 4 in the morning that my Nanode's CPU usage went up to 100% for over an hour, and I know exactly what that is. It's a probably a denial of service attack or something. I have it locked down so only one person can get in. It's me by IP address, so who knows? I shut it down, brought it back up again. Everything's smooth and groovy. I'm going to keep an eye on that. Normal internet stuff. All right, let's double click. So here's what you get. And all you got to do is do this once for your installation. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we're going to use the same emulator for Hercules in the future, for MTS or MVS. It is the de facto go-to thing. You just set up a profile for whatever kind of server you want to attach to. You can have as many as your little heart desires, and pretty much we'll just use it for everything. We may still use the built-in SIM390. I don't know why, but you never know. We might use it for an operator console in the background while we're logging in as a guest or something, just to be more accurate. But here's how it works. Only two things you're going to need to know. A name that you want to give this thing, the IP address of where your server is functioning. In this case here, we're local, so it's your local machine. And we're going to, well, three things. We're going to change the size of the font because my old eyes, I need to be able to see a little better, so I don't like these little tiny things. And for us, on the screen, here it is. All right, we've double-clicked on WC3270 Wiz. It brings up the wizard. The first thing we're going to do is create a brand new entry. Before I say here's the ones I already have. I have an MTS, MVS TK5. That's the Nanode. That's the one that's on my virtual private server from Linode, Akamai, whatever. And I also have a TK5 instance local that I don't really use because I don't really need to, but it's there. So I'm going to make a new one. So automatically hit the new or one. It's already there. Here's what I'd like you to do, just for fun. When we downloaded the SIM390 environment for Music SP, I asked you to put it into a directory called Music SP-TK for turnkey. And I just said the easiest thing to do is just drop it in off the root of C. Not that these two care what the name of this thing cares about the name of your directory is, but for your own remembrance, so you can remember things just for you. Why don't you create a session name with the same exact name as the directory you dropped all your Sim390 stuff into? Don't have to. Call it Bob's your uncle. I don't care, but I just like to do things easy. So I'm going to call it Music SP-TK for easiness. And it's going to say, what's the address? What's your host? Well, if you don't know the host address, it's pretty simple to find out. Go ahead down here, open up a command prompt, just type in ipconfig and get your local IP address. So the local IP address here for version 4 for IP4. Does anybody use 6? Somebody does. 192.168.1.169. That is it. Jot it down. I actually have a label maker that I put the IP addresses on my computers. Now, isn't that geeky? It is, but it works. All right, that is the name of the machine here that I'm running Sim390 on, and that's what I'm going to say. I think you could use 127.0.0.1, or you could just type in localhost, I guess. I don't know, but what's the difference? Let's just type in the IP address, 192.168.1.169. That is the actual address that the current music Sim390 is running on. There she be, up in the corner. Go ahead and hit that, double check it. All right, you get this bunch of options. Not a lot to change. Nothing we really need to do. We're not going to give it its own LU. It's just not going to be not necessary. But what's really necessary is number 3. Change the TCP port because we're going to come in through, guess it, port 3270. What a shock. All right, so we're going to change that to 3270 from the original Telnet port. 3270. All right, because that is what Music SP Sim390 is expecting you to talk to it on. What else to do? I want to change the font. I use 25 for that. Brings up a font selection window. Probably the only time you see a graphic window at all in this thing. I'm going to choose IBM 3270 because it's cool. Why not, right? Go bold, young man. Go to 18 because you don't have to do any of this. You can keep it microscopic for all anybody cares. But I like it bigger so we can all see, right? All right, so if you notice, it changed it over here. So the font is now IBM 3270 bold 18. Everything else you can just leave alone. Just say none, nothing else to do. Create the session, defaults to yes. Create a desktop shortcut, you bet. There we are. And look over here. There it is right now. It immediately set up a shortcut. And all you got to do now is just get out of this thing. Enter number 9. Number 9. Number 9. If you don't know what number 9 means, look at the Beatles. Okay. And we're out. That's it. That's all there is to it. So right now I have this running. To get to it, I just double click on that new icon. And there it is. So how does this compare to the one that's built in? Well, not much difference, but watch. There they are, together as a comparison. Is one prettier than the other? Yeah, one's prettier than the other. I mean, the built-in one's prettier, but it's this is more, shall I say, authentic. And there's a little different definitions of the colors, too. Not a whole lot, but, you know. So this is the one that's the local session, and this is the one in the new one that we just made. All right, so let's kill this off here. Already, this is assigned device 0F0. If we go over here to options, display the config file, and I bring this guy over here. Come on over here, yo. Here we go. Notice, all right, that's the internal telnet device 0F0. Go down the config file. IO device local 32700F0. So that's the ID of the local session. If I had opened another local session, let's just have some fun here. Have a look. Now the next local session is 0F1. So there is 0F0. There's 0F1. They're both local sessions. They've both been defined in the configuration file right here. So now you're getting the gist of how this all goes together. Hercules, the other great emulator, is the same way, where it expects a configuration file. Granted, much more complex, much more, robust, full of stuff, but the idea is identical. You have to put together, if it's not done for you already, a configuration file to explain to the emulator your entire hardware environment. And in Sim 390, thanks to Dave Edwards, it's relatively straightforward. In Hercules, it's much more involved, as it were. All right. So let's close these two down. And now we're stuck left with the one from the outside world, this one here. So it doesn't tell me right now which one it is, but it will when I log in. So watch this. Music under the usual stuff applies. 000. Tab down. CUL8TR. All right, up here, port 0F4, task control block 13. So now this is a remote login from a remote terminal. Even though it's on the same machine, let's not worry about that. More Bucky's coffee. Hold on. It's actually not Bucky's coffee. I don't know what I'm doing, why I do this, but I think it's funnier than Get Out. But I got a Bucky's mug that I love, and I like Tim Hortons coffee. And I live in a town not too far from, the great concrete continuum. I'm somewhere between New York City and Philadelphia. So I got Tim Hortons coffee in the middle of Wawa territory while I'm drinking out of a Bucky's mug. I am a rebel, if there ever was one, huh? Yeah. Okay, so over here you can see that we're coming in as a remote terminal user on port 0F4, and you get down the list of things in the configuration file. The I/O device finds 0F4, and there she be. There's our first remote login, and this could be from anywhere that you have access to the internet, or the interwebs, or local, and it could be on this side of the router, that side of the router. As long as you have an IP address you can get to, this is how it works. You with me so far? I hope so. And again, the reason why we're doing this is because we have to move on. We have to keep building on our knowledge. We got some of the basics down of what it looks like and how you hit stuff and keyboard. And now we're going to go into some connectivity so that you get my gist. All right. I'm going to throw this little graphic up here on the screen. Isn't it cute? That took me about 2 hours to do that. It was actually quite a bit of fun. This is a diagram sort of showing you how we come into the system and how it's laid out in a TCP/IP environment. If it were in a different environment, like an SNA environment or a dial-up or something of that nature, you'd have different protocols, but we don't. We're coming in through good old TCP/IP like we always do, and this is what it looks like. So let's just pretend that we're in our dormitory. And we're busy studying, the history of wheat. And we're online to the mainframe going through whatever chores that we were told to do by the instructor. We are coming in through an emulator on our PC or a laptop. It would be assigned I/O device 0F7 perhaps. And it would be given a control block of 15, which means that Music XP, SP, I keep saying XP, Music SP would be able to keep track of your tasks versus the guy in the dorm next to you that seems to be making way too much noise for studying. And maybe he's got a different task control block. I don't want to go down that route. Anyhow, let's say you can't stand the noise from the guy next door in his dormitory. You decide to trudge through the snow in the middle of a Canadian blizzard, and you go to the college library. Now you're in the pink area, and you log into a remote terminal, and now you are in through 0F4. Now, the fun thing is, depending upon the installation, I don't think this is too common, you could be in 2-3 different terminals all at the same time. I think it kicks you out, but I noticed that I can get in through the same user ID, $000, multiple times. So, it depends how they have things set up and who is who. So in your college library, that's what you would be over there. In the admin offices where you go to find out why you keep getting an F in social studies, they perhaps are using Windows NT Server and a different protocol. I don't know. It's variable, but the key to the whole thing is that all of these different terminals get a assigned user the device ID, not user ID, device ID, that hex code right there, and connectivity through TCP/IP. Now, in that orangey area, maybe that's the data center in the big glass cabinet that you can't get to, and it has a PC in there, but that's local. That PC is local, either on its own subnet or instead of a router, maybe, just maybe, it has its connections through a communications controller, an actual IBM communications controller. You just don't know. Also, look over there, the I/O devices for the things that are attached to the actual mainframe. For instance, you could have a local printer, 00E, which actually goes to printout.txt instead of some big honking printer. And then the DASD, the direct access storage device, which is where it boots from. And all that is a file on your PC, as you know. But that functions as its repository of all the things it knows and how to be a computer. Alrighty, so that's my little graphic there showing you how it all goes together. And hopefully I made it bigger because I had some people comment about how some of the things I was putting on was too small. And the reason why it was too small is because I just didn't understand exactly how to use OpenShot. I'm getting better at it. All right, back over to here. We are now, let's say, logging in now, and we are coming in from our first instance of a remote terminal. I want to show you something interesting. Now, we're going to move ahead a little bit here. Right now, I'm coming in as administrator. I logged in as $000. And up in the upper right-hand corner, it says admin 00. And it gives me this big honking list of all these easy to do things, right? Okay, nothing new. We've seen this before. Let's get out of this. Let's log out. Off. But let's do something interesting. Let's close that out. Let's open up a local window. Let's pretend that I am an actual console administrator in the data center at the university. All right. And let's keep these two separate. So on the left-hand side, you've got the guy in his dormitory or in the college library. And over here, you have the guy who works for the college, and he's in the data center watching you logging in and logging out 52 times like some kind of nitwit. All right. I'm going to log in on the right-hand side as the usual boss, 000. And I'm going to come in, so UL8TR. You've seen this before. Okay. The first thing I'm presented with is a little bit of information. User ID last signed on, yada, 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 sign on, time, port 0F0, TCB9. Okay, watch this. Now, I've gotten out of bed, I've walked across the snow, I've got my cup of coffee, I've got my class assignment for the day. Time to log in from the library, and here's what I'm going to log in as. I'm going to log in as guest, and the password for guest is PASS4U. All right? Looky. It does not give me any of this information. The guest doesn't get to know very much about what's going on in the background, very little indeed, because it doesn't need to. The guest is a guest, or whatever your name was that you were assigned for the class. However, this guy over here is the console operator, the admin. He's in, and he is given the main screen, the big deal. He gets to see everything. I don't know what that little glitch was before it dropped me into something else, but this is where it was supposed to drop me. So here I am. Look at the difference. So as the admin, I get to see all sorts of stuff. But as a guest coming in remotely, I only get to see a little bit of stuff. And the reasoning is because in the profile for guest, this is where they were told you're going to be. This is as far as you get if you have the profile of guest. Very limited stuff to do. Maybe you can change your name and password, things of that nature. But over here on the right-hand side, you are the admin, and you get a lot more based upon what your needs are. And that's all established by the systems administrator. All right, guest, minimum amount of stuff. Administrator, lots of stuff. How much can you do between the two of them? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to drop out of this. And if I type in dir as the system administrator, I get the root of my user ID. If I come over here as guest and I drop out of here, and let's try a dir, what do I get? Very little. Okay, because I'm user guest, and that's my root. These are my files. That's all I get. Over here, I'm the big cheese. I get more. And if I know the actual volume path name, if I know the actual partition, if I know the right words to say, I can get to a heck of a lot more places as the admin than I could get as a guest. And that's what we're going to do in the next video. I'm actually going to do about one of my favorite topics, and that is why a computer like Colossus could even possibly become as sentient as it did, if not even sentient, and how impossible that could be. And we're going to do that one next just for a little break, and then we'll get right back into this stuff. But we need a little break. We need a little mental break from all this, something with a little more levity. But here we are. So in this particular video, I wanted to show you the difference between A, your local environment, and B, going in remotely with an emulator. I wanted to show you the difference between going into the system as the admin and how much more you get to do and see and play around in, and how limited you are if you're going in as a simple guest, all established by the bosses that be, but this is the control structure, so everybody doesn't log in and just have their way with it, and what these two different things look like. You can change a lot in this than you can in here. The local session, you can hardly change anything. Getting back to what I was saying about having access to the program function keys, if you notice over here, there's not a whole lot you can do with this. You can right-click to your heart's content, and you're not going to get any new menus. But over here in the remote session, you have menus. If you click on, let's say, File, you get a lot of different things. You can edit this session. You can change the way it looks. You can do all sorts of stuff. You go into options, cursor blink. See, it's a lot more controllable, but the most important thing is the keypad. When I click on this, it actually shows me an equivalent keypad. So if some menu says you have to press PF20, wherever that is on your laptop, you don't worry about it. You just click on that, and it would do whatever it asks. Now, in this case here, it doesn't do anything because PF20 wasn't asked for. But if it were, if it said, here's your options, and you only have 4 options, they all require a program function key, and hitting on F3 doesn't work, your emulator is going to let you do it just by clicking on this. It would be like you had a VT100, or not even a VT100, some kind of a 3270 terminal sitting in front of you. Okay, so that's why we're going to use this now for our musings and playing arounds rather than the local one, because, we need to. Alrighty, so there you go. There is part 5. Moving on slowly but surely as we get through learning the ropes. And keep in mind, this all still applies to any other environment for the most part. This is not something that is just for Music SP and then you forget about it and say that was no fun. These are things that apply to everything. The mainframe does have some commonality no matter what you're doing, and one of them is how the terminal works. And this is the case. Okay. Hey, again, thank you for the phenomenal comments. They're very encouraging. They're very positive, and we are learning a lot. Please keep them coming. Let's keep the conversation going back and forth. And as always, please subscribe so you know when I drop the next video. I tend to put it out there on the actual site, my YouTube site, so it motivates me to make sure I stay on schedule and lets you know when to tune back in again. I think that's a good way of doing things. Some people don't tell you, and then months go by and you don't hear from them. Anyhow, all right, please subscribe. Thanks again, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.